We thank you so much for joining us at our CP Table Talk. Today we're going to talk about our missions trip to Puerto Rico and around the table. We have people who have been to Puerto Rico and love missions, love Jesus, love the people there, and we want to take some time and we just want to talk amongst ourselves as you listen to us share about our experiences in Puerto Rico. So I have some questions I'm just going to ask, and as we feel led and comfortable, by all means, we'll speak up and share about that. So to start, maybe what was your favorite part of in Puerto Rico? So what's your favorite part about your missions trip to Puerto Rico?
Great question.
That's a fantastic question.
I know on this last trip for me, it was watching the new people who hadn't been, but got to, see all the things that we had been talking about for basically 3 years. So that was awesome.
Right on.
Yeah, I think it was also for me the people, but it was also just the response of the people. You would speak to people, and it would just be just a free-flowing conversation with people. People so welcoming to engage in conversation with you, which is so wonderful to see, and just so loving when you do talk to them. And I just miss that about being down there. So yeah, just the love that people had in their hearts to want to engage was amazing.
Judah agrees. Yeah.
For me, it was the receptiveness of people down there, just sort of what Sean said, just being open, especially when we were at the university campus down there, evangelizing and talking to a whole bunch of students that were very receptive, and got to pray with a lot of them, and it was very inspiring to see that some of the similar things that we contend with here at home are also throughout the globe. It's about the big picture. Yeah.
Yeah. So as we go on these mission trips, we always have what we call sort of our favorite moments of that trip. So what maybe surprised you most about the culture? So here we are from Prince Edward Island. So when we go to Puerto Rico, what took you by surprise maybe about the culture?
I think what took me by surprise was their openness to listen and their willingness to engage in conversation. It was just amazing comforting walking into an environment where people are welcoming you and engaging in conversation with you.
I agree. I just think they're incredibly loving. Like those people just going from here to there, just seeing like the amount of love that they have is different and it's inspiring.
Grab the mic. And it was interesting to see just the cultural difference was stark because we go down there and I'm more of an introvert, more awkward, like I am right now.
No, not you.
And they're so open, and I would get and try to talk to people, and they'd be just so willing to talk to me, and I would just a little shy. But you could still see that they have the same struggles we do. So I met one lady, struggling with grief, same type of grief we share. We're all the same on the inside, no matter the culture. People struggling with addictions and homelessness and being in homes and lonely by themselves. So they all share the same types of problems we have. It's just that the way they express themselves is so much different. But it was challenging, so I got challenged when I was down there, right? So that's what I really found out. The culture down there was amazing for that.
Yeah, I think what surprised me most was the respect for the elderly and the respect for authority. Even when I say that, we live in a culture that doesn't respect really any of that if it comes down to it. So even just being in Puerto Rico, for me as a pastor, being called pastor pretty much all the time by people who knew that. So it was just that respect in the culture. What did you learn or experience that'll change the way you live and the way you represent Jesus here now in the community and in the church?
Judah,
Yeah.
you got a lot to say, but we can't understand.
Maybe I can help lead us off with that, just because I know every one of us at the table here could probably speak immensely on at least with the first trip, and then the second trip done for people as well. For me in the first trip, I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have become a pastor if I didn't go on the first trip. God could have found another way. I can't for sure say that would never have happened. But what I can say is that without it, I wouldn't have had the confidence to probably accept it with as much confidence as I had to be able to accept it. So I was able to grow. It grew me to a position where I was able to eventually take a role in the pastoral leadership. And from that also, it grew from what was on my heart when I went down there is the prayer ministry, because I went down there struggling with my prayer life, and then I got immersed into it, and it was a challenge and it was a struggle, but they just kind of came around me and like nursed, like, you're going to pray now. If you struggle with that, you're going to be praying all the time now. And I grew from that, and that prayer ministry got birthed from the experience of the first trip. And I know there's probably lots of other stories everyone has about something that they took away from the trip down there. So I'll just leave the mic here and you tell that story.
I guess for me, in the first trip, it's kind of where Servant Heart was birthed from the first trip. And then going into the second trip, seeing similar outreaches being done in Puerto Rico, and just the awesomeness of that happening here in Canada as well as happening in Puerto Rico was encouragement for me, for sure.
I didn't go on the last trip, but I went on the 2019 one, and not a lot of people know this, but when I went on the 2019 one, I was struggling with my faith. I wasn't necessarily a believer, but I didn't know what I believed in. So just looking back, like, because 3 years later, I became a believer, so just looking back now, I can see that there were a lot of seeds that were planted in Puerto Rico, and I felt when I was there just like tugging, like spiritual tugging when I was there. So I just think it's cool to go on this next one next year as a believer, just to see the difference and how that will be for me.
Can I have the doodaddy thingamabob, whatever it is, microphone?
Thanks. It was just really eye-opening to see how comfortable we've gotten back home here on Prince Edward Island as opposed to down there. Like, you talk about anything, we've talked about it briefly, but just the willingness to be able to talk about anything and everything to anybody down in Puerto Rico, it was a really refreshing change. And ever since we came back, I've been trying to just talk to people, no matter who they are, to try to get out of that comfort zone. I see that from a lot of our congregation too, ever since we've come back, and it's just been amazing.
Yeah, I think, again, trips like this, and Victoria, when she said about seeds being planted, I think that's important for us to see, because I think when we go to, in a way, where we go outside of our comfort zone, we start to see those things sprout up too. So I'd just go, I think some of that lies within us that the Spirit of God is doing, and then when we, in a way, get comfortable enough to get uncomfortable, things start to show up in our lives. And then that affects how we come back into the community, into our church family as well. So that's the good thing about missions. So that's why people should do absolutely local mission, but global mission as well. So maybe just tell me about a special story or a special event or a person you met that maybe that impacted you while you're in Puerto Rico, from people you meet and things we do.
All right. In 2019, I met a man when we were doing a homeless ministry. Anyway, at the beginning of the ministry, we had a suitcase full of supplies, and at the end of the ministry, the supplies were gone. But during the ministry, I had met a man named Eduardo, and he was moving in search of a better life. So then the Spirit of God, at the end of handing everything out, spoke to me and said, that suitcase needs to go to Eduardo. So that was a really cool experience from 2019.
That's great.
I remember, it was one of our last days. There was a performance.
Yeah, that was
we
our
saw.
last night.
Yeah, our
actually.
last night. Representing basically a visual of the gospel, but it was like a dance.
Yeah.
And that, again, I said I wasn't a believer at the time, but that really did something with me because I don't even remember like being that emotional, but everyone said I was like bawling my eyes out and crying. But that, I felt the spirit like tugging at me at that point, so I feel like that was a moment for me.
Got all the things to say.
Just being able to really get to know our sponsor pastors down there, and Pastor Julian, Pastor Samuel, then Pastor Israel, then even Pastor David, the one that was in charge of making sure nobody got lost on the trip. Just getting to really connect with them was awesome, hearing their own testimonies and still being able to connect with them even back here on Prince Edward Island. I still talk to all of them every day, which is great, and keeping that connection open. It was also amazing. We did a food drive at the university one day, and we had a prayer request box there for people to fill out any prayers and leave any information to contact them if they felt so inclined. Nobody here at the table knows this story, but I forget his last name. His first name's Joe. It's in my phone, but I'm not going to take my phone out. I've been in contact with him since we got back because he filled out a request form. He was from South Africa, and he moved to Puerto Rico, and he didn't have any family or anyone there. And he just wanted somebody to talk to. So at the food drive, I talked to him for 20 minutes. I prayed with him. And then we had a night of fellowship at our first pastor church we were at, Pastor Israel's. And we got some of those prayer requests out of the box. And the one that I got to pray with someone from Puerto Rico on was Joe, this person that I met at the university. So it was amazing that happened. And it was so moving to me because then afterwards I was just, I was a mess for 3 hours, and you guys know what happened. I worshiped after, and yeah, it was good. It was amazing.
And I think it's encouraging to hear those stories because, again, our worldview opens up. So when we go and we experience, be it an event or we encounter somebody who impacts our life, it leads to something deeper. And those are things that the Spirit of God does as we step out in obedience. So it's always good to go down, have those stories, have those experiences and meeting new people. So then, as this goes sort of deeper in our lives, what did you learn about the world and missions? And when I say missions, I'm talking to, because the Bible would go into all the world. So what have you learned from doing this trip to Puerto Rico? Like, how did God show up and maybe change your worldview in regards to missions globally?
I think as far as like learning, to learn is to actually do, right? Do in action. It's not, you can read about missions and you can think you know about it, like literally anything. Probably like being married, you can read about being married, but you don't understand it until you actually live it. So living out your faith is the best way to learn. And I think to be able to pick one thing, you could journal about it. You could try to say, I came to a place where I learned this. But when you are actually acting out in your faith and you're evangelizing and you want to disciple the world, as Jesus said, to go out to all the nations, right? When you actually enter into that, something happens within your spirit. There's life. And we all testified to that in the first trip. And then the second trip, we all testified the Spirit's moving here. So there's pockets of movement that I could feel God moving. And you know that's God. When you have that moment, you're like, this is from God right now. You don't even have to speak it out loud. You just know it. So there was that moment for me when I was moving around the elders' home, and we went into the back to just spread the gospel and preach. And it was just, in those moments, I just knew that I was also growing from that too. And then the first trip, I learned that too. I thought I was going on a mission trip, but then I learned that the mission trip actually came to me. I was being missioned too. I thought I was going down to do mission work to help, and we did, absolutely. But the mission work actually helped me and I kind of felt guilty about that. But the whole thing is that you grow all together from the work that the body of Christ does. Everyone grows from it and learns from it, and that's what I take from that is just the immersed in the experience. That's the best thing you can do, to let it go into your heart and just have that speak to your heart, and you take that with you. And sometimes it's hard for people to put into words and write that out and say, this is what I learned. But you know it in your heart, but you're like, how do I put that on paper? It's so much harder. But yeah, I learned that being in the moment in action. And when we came back here, we became more purposeful too. And that was profound too, because we learned wherever we go, we're on mission globally, locally, in the next town, wherever you are, wherever you're doing missions is where you are. So yeah, that's what I learned.
Yeah, I think what we got to maybe guard against sometimes is we have a small context or a small worldview. And then when we do a trip like this, it can broaden that, which is what I believe most people need. So the danger is that we just keep the small worldview. So by doing this, I think it opens up our hearts and our lives. So for me, even as a pastor, I can be so focused, be it on Charlottetown, Montague, Prince Edward Island, and yet God said, look at the world. And I think for some of us, the mission trip helps us sort of go, oh man, like life is bigger than just here. So I think that's what God does as we go on mission. He goes and says, not only will I give you a heart for where I have you and a heart for where you're going on a missions trip, but I'm going to broaden the heart for the whole world. So that's why there's this desire to see people from every nation, tongue come to know Jesus. So it's encouraging when you hear how God opens that up. So then with that then, what is God teaching you because as you go to Puerto Rico and you're there for the week, you're in a different routine. So you're focused on devotions, you're focused on connecting with each other and doing the mission. So now that you're back here, what is God teaching you as you get back into your daily routine? Because he's the same God here as in Puerto Rico. So what's he teaching you?
I'll make this really quick. Interconnections with other people, relational, intentional connections with people. I think that's what I took coming back, and I could see that within others in the team. People becoming more intentional to bridge connections and have that relation with people. I think that was been phenomenal this time around, which we did in 2019, and now it's happening again in 2023. So that's phenomenal.
Let me take him. Anybody else? What's God teaching you as you've gotten back here now? You're in your routine again.
So it's not necessarily something that he taught me back here, but he taught me so much in 2019 how to trust him more, because I think I was really weak in that area. And man, it was like nonstop, little confirmations and affirmations of different ways that I needed to recognize how much I wasn't trusting him. So that I was able to take back here and then apply that, which has been so great. So yeah.
That's awesome.
One thing that I've really been trying to focus on since I got back is not to get back into that cookie cutter mold that we sort of put ourselves in here. Love the place that we're in, but it just seems like that's sort of a stigma these days. So just to try to stay out of that cookie cutter mold where everyone thinks everyone's the exact same, where everyone has the same gifts and talents and can invest the same amount of time, energy, and effort into the exact same things. That's not how it works. I've seen different people from our not just our missions trip team, but from our congregation here at Centerpoint, from other people in the community, just really start to branch out and do stuff outside of Sunday morning, which is really super duper inspiring. Whether that be going to food banks, whether that be going to outreach centers, whether that be even helping somebody out in our church community or any community on PEI. I've seen all this, and it's really helped grow communities closer, and it's really helped, I feel, like bring our church community even closer, especially after the pandemic and everything that we've been through the past few years and all those hardships.
So as we go on missions, what normally happens is in a way, we get thrown into the lion's den in a way, where you're doing different things, and some of it can be fearful because you're like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I have the ability to do it. So maybe as you've experienced going on mission in Puerto Rico, what surprised you in the way of maybe a gifting you might not have seen that you had? And all of a sudden, because of that circumstance that you were thrown into, it started to come to life. So what are those giftings that you've seen come out during the trip?
Really, Judith?
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
One thing I was able to appreciate was actually through a lack of my gift. I was able to find appreciation through it, to see other people's gifts magnified through the lack of my gift. So I'm weak in approaching people and initiating a conversation. Very weak. I'm an introvert. I'm shy. So as we were evangelizing onto the campus, and I was going around, I could see my weakness highlighted. But then I was able to pray for the other members of the team and use another strength to help out the body. But it was to be able to see the body of Christ at work and how everyone functions in different ways, not the cookie cutterness of our faith that Zach was just talking about. We all have different gifts that we're given, and we were using them in very different ways on that campus. And through my weakness, I was able to see that so much clearly. And I just thank God for that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm talking a lot.
But I guess
There's
I'll
only
keep
a
talking.
few of us here.
A gift that I didn't really know that I had was the gift of evangelism. When we spent 2 days at the university, after the first day, we weren't planning on going back the second day, but I'm so happy that we did. I just kept talking about it over and over and over again because it was just so inspiring to go up to a complete stranger and then leave, be able to pray with them, be able to give them the best, and be able to bring them closer to Jesus. I don't know who sitting at the table or who from our team knows, but I have a bracelet program that one of our sponsor pastors gave me, and I'm hoping to launch it here at Centerpoint soon. But whenever I talk to somebody and we ended the conversation, they let me pray for them something specifically in English, I'd give them a bracelet and I'd explain what it was. And I only came back after those 2 days with 5 bracelets left. And I started with a full bag, so it was so inspiring just to be able to do that and connect deeply with a lot of people. Because I'm a talker, but I've never talked that much about people my own age about Jesus. So it was awesome.
So in 2019, we did outreach to the elderly home. That was very challenging for me. But then, so when we went in 2023, just a couple months ago, we went to the same elderly home. And I walked in with a confidence and a peace that allowed me to go into the rooms and pray over the elderly. So that was encouraging to see just how God, I didn't even know God was at work in that area, but to see that unfold was pretty cool.
Yeah, so I think what we learn most is that when we're, in a way, sent somewhere where there's some fear, there's some, I don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
What we see from that is that the Spirit of God shows up and He does things in our lives, be it the gifts like evangelism, the gift of even compassion and the courage to even now pray for people. And I think these are things that maybe we miss out on if our faith just becomes Sunday to Sunday. So by stepping out and experiencing that on a mission trip is always encouraging. You know, for myself, I grew up in the church, so I'm aware what of my, what I call my spiritual gifts. I think what God teaches me more is the sensitivities to the Spirit as He's leading. Because sometimes we can, even locally, for example, do evangelism, but we're taking the gospel and shoving it down, and then we go, well, I did evangelism. Whereas there's a sensitivity to the Spirit now to go, is that hitting the person right? Am I loving the person well with my words and what I'm saying? So where I see God at work in my life is the Spirit always, He expands my horizon to go, I want you to see me, and I want you to see me at work, be it in our group's life, like what Jen mentioned earlier. Those are awesome experiences, but then even in our own lives to go, wow, if I didn't have the Spirit of God leading me, that would have been a disaster. So just be encouraged, and I want to promote that more people would get on mission, come on a missions trip, and especially to see God show up when you're uncomfortable. So that's sort of the heart, even why we're here today doing this, is we just don't want to be the same team going back every year. We want new people to come in, and by us being open and sharing, like, I see new giftings, I see the Spirit of God at work, I see things where I'm weak at become strong, I see my weaknesses in that way, that God takes that and uses it. So yeah, be encouraged. I love hearing our stories. So what do you miss most about Puerto Rico? Now, we love PEI. If we didn't, we wouldn't be living here, because all of us have a choice to leave. So what do you miss most about Puerto Rico?
Me the trend. I seem to be going first. I just miss being with our Puerto Rican family. They've become family, right? So when you're separated from your family, you long and you ache to be with them again. So I think it's that.
Yeah.
It is literally that, because we did form a bond when we went down there, an intentional bond. I don't think we all realized. We went down. I remember we had the intention. We want to be intentional when we go down there to form, some kind of a relationship. But I don't think we were prepared for how deep that was going to go. I don't think any of us were ready for that, and we formed very deep bonds and relationships. So that when we leave now, there's that ache in our hearts where we're like, we're so sad to see each other parted. So I don't even remember the question.
Yep. You miss your Puerto Rican family. What do you miss most? Why am I even doing this?
Did I get the question right?
Yeah,
Yeah, you got
I
it.
second that for sure.
Everybody just talk.
Say whatever you want.
Say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyone else? Like, what do you miss most about Puerto Rico? You haven't said anything, so
because
you should say something there.
So I wasn't.
Just the love and the kindness of the people, and like what Sean said, the family. I'm excited to go back.
I mean, this is like superficial.
Krispy
This is gonna be
Kreme?
my first.
So you miss Krispy Kreme donuts.
I was gonna say the food, but
Nobody wants it.
this is my really deep, the deep question, deep answer to your question is, the food. And Krispy Kreme isn't bad. Friends Cafe, the coffee,
Yeah.
it's great. I mean, experiencing the culture in general is just awesome. And I think I miss, like Sean said, the family. Like, it's just the people there. It's just so, I don't know, it's just so awesome. And I think, being out of your comfort zone is just a cool, taking a day by day, experience. Like when you're in Puerto Rico, like here, you're always in a routine and you're comfortable. But there, it's just cool to, not know. Like, we have a plan, but you don't really know what's going to happen during the day.
Yeah.
So I think I sort of miss that aspect of it where people are kind of planning it, and obviously God's really planning all of it, but it's cool to just walk into what God has next, and obviously we can bring that back to our lives here. But it's just cool when you're there walking through that. So I miss that.
Yeah, and I think maybe one of the things to encourage us is we go on mission and some people go, oh, you gotta be super spiritual and all of that. And these are moments where I go, we're on mission, yes, but it's so amazing to get glimpses of that culture. And that's why saying things like, I miss the food is okay. Even the scenery, even the weather, because it's really nice there. And if some people's motive is, I want to go somewhere warm, if that's your motive, it could be the wrong motive, and then you go down, and God changes you and gets a hold of your heart. So I think the part of our faith that maybe we miss out on sometimes is that Jesus wants us to enjoy him. And he's created this world, he's created the people. So we can go to these places and enjoy different aspects of the culture as we do mission, as we share our faith, as we help people. We can stop and take in the beauty of the scenery. We can eat the food and be like, that was really good. So I don't think it's superficial. I think it's part of life that God goes, I want you to enjoy that. So if more people want to come to warm weather in February, by all means, and then we pray that you get a big heart for Jesus. So
Great save, Howie.
Yeah.
Great save.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the recovery.
so then how do you want to experience or how do you want to remember this experience as you move forward? We'll end with this question. So how do you want to remember this experience as you go forward?
Got a long way down.
I just want to remember the growth that I saw, not just in myself, but as I saw in the entire team down there, and even the growth that I saw in the short time we got to spend with our sponsor pastors and David and Maria down there. It was just amazing to get to know them and get so close so fast with them. And like Sean alluded to already, that made the goodbyes extra tough. Yeah. So remembering that they're there, it's not just PEI. There's a whole other world out there, right? And everyone needs to be pointed towards Jesus, not just people here on PEI.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
I think I want to remember and take from because I've been on both of the mission trips to Puerto Rico, is just that we can do what we did there here, and it's not some special one-time trip thing God only moves in Puerto Rico. I think reminding ourselves daily that what God did and what we saw from the stories that people shared here in Puerto Rico, that can happen here and that happens here every day, but we might not have our eyes open to all of that, or being willing to have our ears even open to hearing about stuff like that. So I think just reminding myself of that every day, that it's not just in Puerto Rico, but going to Puerto Rico and experiencing that, I think opens your eyes to seeing that here and being oh, God is moving here, and I can see it even better because I saw it in Puerto Rico so clearly and visibly, that I think that's something I don't want to forget.
The entire experience definitely opens the eyes of your heart. Yeah.
And even just on that, what Jess just said, Jesus says to go into all the world and all nations. What we tend to do sometimes is we create a point, and then we create a point A and a point B, and it's always to go from my point to the next point. But we don't realize that all it's all encompassing is what he means. He doesn't mean go to all the corners. He does mean go to all the corners, but also where you're standing. And then when you go to the grocery store, you're there. And then when you go to a trip to Moncton, you're there. Who goes to Moncton? Sorry, Moncton.
All the Moncton people hit
Kidding.
clothes.
Kidding.
We go to the mall.
We love you, New Brunswick. We love
That's
you.
where Islanders are going.
We
So.
gotta go. To
There to get
We
canned.
really do go to Moncton. But wherever you go, get caught.
Even in
Everyone be still and back. We go everywhere. That's what Jesus is saying. So literally that, to remember and not to fall into complacency when we come back, right? And fall into the routines and because Jen could speak on this more probably than me, because she talks about it a lot, just having that just a level of complacency or going back to old routines. You got to guard from that. So.
Yeah, I think maybe the best way to close our discussion today is, I'll just go, what I want to remember most is that it doesn't matter about your age, your abilities. So on our last trip, I was well aware of this, we brought Judah, our son, 9 months old.
I was distracting
Yeah.
everyone.
And Janet, who was on our mission trip, who would be the oldest one, and to just see how God uses even a 9-month-old, and then no matter our ages, right? Like we could all go, here we are, we know our weaknesses, and yet God still uses us. And I just want to destroy those excuses as to why people don't do mission, be it locally or be it globally. So maybe God's been putting this on people's hearts. So my prayer is that He just destroys those excuses where it's like, well, I'm too old and what do I have to give? Or I'm too young, I couldn't do that. Or I don't have money, but God owns the cattle on the hill. Like He has it all. So our heart is that we see people just on mission in our church body. And that's locally, that's in our own lives, and that's also when we have these opportunities. So yeah, so my encouragement as we close out our discussion is that people just get out of their seat and they do something. And missions to Puerto Rico, from what we've experienced, we would tell people, go. It's
Good
time.
option.
So yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for your time, guys, as we had some fun questions, and as well for those who have watched this. We hope that your heart's encouraged, and Jess and myself apologize for our baby.
Sean apologizes
And,
for his
that.
Moncton comment.
Yeah, and we do love Moncton.
We apologize.
Moncton and
We're all
missions.
going to
Yeah.
Moncton soon.
But yeah,
And don't be afraid to reach out if you have any questions about the trip.
Yeah.
To anybody.
so yeah, so thanks for listening, and God bless you. And the mission trip deadline is April 28th. Please talk to Jen. She's our missions coordinator. So if you talk to any one of us, we're going to send you over to Jen, and she'll deal with you in
In all your annoying ways.
and in all our annoying ways. She deals with that. So we're grateful for Jen and her heart to be heading this up here at our church. So yeah, God bless.